So I represent the European food and drink industry, vast majority of which is SMEs. We are Europe's biggest employer, to come back on something you mentioned earlier on. We create the most jobs of any industry. We also bring the biggest value added to the governments throughout the European Union and broader Europe, actually. So we also have companies in Turkey, for example, that was mentioned earlier on as well. Ülker, or the Yildiz Group, is one of our big members. So we are a very important economic driver in Europe. And I like to think that we also bring a lot of pleasure. We bring a lot of diverse products to people. We keep people fed, and we play a very important role, of course, throughout the region. So food plays a crucial role in all of our lives. We've seen that. It's necessary for growth, it's necessary to provide energy, to repair and maintain body cells, etc., etc. But it represents a lot more than just the sum of its individual nutrients. It's an important contributor as well to our social lives. If we're celebrating, food is there. If we're meeting, food is there. It brings people together. We have a very diverse culture, food culture in Europe. We have anything from here Nordic diets, Mediterranean diets. Food unites us. So in discussions around food, we also sometimes forget to talk about the psychological impact. It makes people happy, but it can also be something that if you're not feeling too happy, you can overeat. This can also be bad. So it has a psychological impact, has an important role to play as well. We know the figures, I won't go there. This slide is just to say we are under big pressure today. The food system is under pressure. Zooming in on, sorry, this has to go through each one, there you go. You've seen this earlier on, so I'm not going to go into the detail. It's foresight. I think it was, who was it, our Indonesian friend, or Malaysian friend here who mentioned it. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what foresight this group in the UK thinks has an impact on diets, on the food we eat. So it's anything from the amount of food we eat, but also the sort of food we eat, the time we eat it. It's genetic, it's to do with activity, it's to do with social habits, it's to do with sleep, it's to do with a lot of stuff that you may not think. So the point I'm making here is because I've been asked to talk about responsibility. There are a lot of actors involved. So yes, the food industry is responsible, has an important role to play, but it's not the only one actor that is responsible. Obesity is a huge problem. In Europe, 1 in 6 adults is obese, and even in some categories of children, 1 out of every 3 is obese. So coming back to what Pam said, we are aware that we're in trouble. But what I wanted to say is no one can solve this on his own. In fact, the solution, in our view, is simple in a sense. It's if we can get to prevent rather than manage. So the key to driving the solution is in prevention. Prevention so that we can avoid people from birth and even from pre-birth to become overweight or obese, rather than managing or helping people that are suffering from an obesity or diabetes or a non-communicable disease to become healthier again. Obviously, it's better if we can focus on the former and not on the latter. Governments across the EU and the larger European area actually spend on average less than 3% of their healthcare budgets on prevention. And this, I think, is where we're making a mistake. So food, as I say, is part of the solution, but it can be part of the solution from the prevention side, but also from the management or treatment side. So who's involved or who should be involved? Well, here we think that the governments and public authorities have a key role to play, not only at national level, but also at local level. So you can talk about town councils or city levels, targeted community programs that provide solutions which are adapted to local contexts. And I'll give some examples of these later on. These can be very different from one country to another, from one commune to another, or one community to another. We ourselves as individuals are responsible for what we do as parents, how we feed our kids. I've got 3, and I can assure you that if I didn't get it right initially, I think I'd have a problem today. At the moment, thank heavens, I don't have a problem, but they're all in their 20s. So I think I've put them on the right path. The producers and distributors of food in the supply chain play an important role because they bring the food to the millions, 500 million consumers in Europe every day. And we also are the biggest exporter of food to the world market. So we have a global role to play as well. The medical community is very important. This was mentioned earlier, doctors, dietitians, etc. Especially when we think that we want to move towards prevention rather than cure. So they really have an important role. Consumer groups, NGOs are important as well. They can raise awareness, they can identify good eating habits, better lifestyles. Physical activity groups they have an underestimated role. One of the things, just to be on a very personal note, that I got the kids some time ago was a Wii. I don't know if you remember these. These are things that you use. You play tennis in front of your television set. Okay, it just gets people up off the couch and doing something. I also I'm in a group, a Fitbit group, and we go out. So these are companies like Fitbit that actually encourage people to get up and to move. Now this is all very Europe, of course. I'm not talking global here. I'm talking about a Western society that just overeats or has a bad diet linked with a bad lifestyle. What else? Media, of course, their role is sometimes underestimated as well. There's a lot of scaremongering around, which is unfortunate. There are lots of catchy headlines which improve consumer uptake of the articles in that press, but sometimes they're rather scaremongering. And media includes not only traditional media, but also, as was mentioned earlier, the social media, which is increasingly important. What's that? 1 minute. That's a cheat. That's a cheat. I've only done 6. So if from a manufacturer's perspective, we are working on nutrition and health issues as well, driving taste, pleasure, convenience. We're also very conscious of the role that we can play to tackle non-communicable diseases. But this is also a business opportunity for us because we can explore new markets, new product innovations. And what we have done, over the last 10 years, we have worked on this, and we will continue working on it. We're looking at a goal, which is to decrease energy intake by 10% in the European population by 2020. Now, the baseline is 2010, so that's hugely ambitious. This is a very recent commitment that we have made. We're working on reducing energy intake by 10%, not just ourselves in the food industry, although we're well on the way to doing that, but also joining hands with other partnerships across the chain. I'm almost there. Balanced diets. What is it? It has to be nutritious, it has to be varied, inclusive. You don't have to get rid of something that you are currently eating. It's all about being sensible, eating everything with moderation. This is what our mothers used to say. But it's also being something around being enjoyable. Food must be enjoyable as well. I won't go into this slide. So you can look at our website, please do, to see what is being done, not only by the food industry, but also by public authorities throughout the region, by the medical community and by academia. Lots and lots of examples. The site is called Eat and Live Well, so please do have a look. It's new. These are just some examples of things that are happening. It's linked to food companies, but it's also linked to governments, regions. APOD, I don't know if you know APOD, it's something, for example, that was rolled out in cities like Amsterdam, in other cities, France, in Lille, for example. And it's where the medical people, profession, the teachers, the governments, they all got together, even with the county council's infrastructure, and they built cycling paths. Now, it sounds silly, but parents were bringing kids to school by car because they didn't like the kids to go out on their bikes. So the city of Lille just said, well, to hell with this, and they built bike tracks, and they do these little they accompany the smaller kids, especially every day, to school on their bicycles. It's simple. So in a sense, prevention is more simple than cure. So that's what we should be looking at. And to finish off on a Danish example, increasing fiber consumption has actually doubled in Denmark over the last couple of years, thanks to this unpronounceable, thank you, Fullkorn, there you go, initiative that you have done, and I think that's really great. So we need more of that. Thank you.